Good afternoon to you all. It's a pleasure to co-host this along with Almus. This is the second year we're doing this in a row, and it's an honor to address you all. While the presentation is getting ready, I'll just give the crux of what we're trying to communicate. We are already running out of time. The presentation is actually made for 45 minutes, but we barely have about 15 minutes. I think I don't want to stand between you and lunch. So the crux of what we're trying to say is technology in Treasury the world over has actually evolved in a way that Treasury can take on more responsibilities than just doing operational work. So there is an operational component of Treasury, there's a business component of Treasury, and there is a strategic component of Treasury. Technology can really take you up the curve, can take you from operations to doing business better to strategy. A lot of Indian corporates that we looked at, we surveyed, and Deloitte has done some work on it, and they've done a very good survey in 2015. They find that a lot of Indian corporates are still on Excel, like Maulik mentioned. And because of this affinity to Excel, a lot of energy actually is bottled up in running your day-to-day operations. It is running in macros, there are multiple versions of Excel sheets, there are errors, therefore controls to capture those errors. Then it's also dependent on one or two people because who know really how to operate Excel. And there is also a challenge of collecting data to one place. Treasury has evolved over a period of time. Earlier, mostly in dealing. Most of the treasurers were looking at dealing. And of late, treasurers have to look inwards into the organization, also to look at and communicate with the various business units, and to really understand the risks that emanate from the businesses, and to help them manage those risks. I think the Treasury tech has not, Excel certainly doesn't help you do that. Excel helps you collect the data on email and so on, and then put it in and then do the dealing. But certainly doesn't help you get a good view of what the business is doing, and doesn't enable you to communicate with the business to help them manage their risks. So the move away from Treasury, the Excel technology is at times called the Treasury technology because a lot of stress associated with Excel itself, to actual Treasury technology. So Treasury technology can help you a lot with the operational side of Treasury, also with the business side of Treasury, and can enable you to take up the strategic role in Treasury. So when I say operations, I basically mean deal capture, confirmations, settlements, your regular accounting, and so on. The business side of Treasury is really your identification of exposures, hedging it at the right time, P&L management, maybe even hedge accounting policies, and investments, managing investments, performance monitoring of investments, and looking at long-term debt and capital structures. The strategic side, Treasury really grows from interacting with the markets or the internal business units to interacting with the stakeholders themselves, with the shareholders themselves. So that's the shareholder side of the Treasury. So at that time, you are actually engaging in not so much in debt management, but in more capital structure management itself. Also, engaging with the stakeholders in raising equity, long-term debt, choosing the right counterparties, your banking relationships, and so on, which kind of banks you deal with, and so on. So Treasury, the technology in Treasury can actually play a big role enabling Treasury to move from operations to a strategic role, a sort of a central role in many organizations. The world over it has happened. I think in India, like Maulik mentioned, quite a few people have taken the ERP route. A lot of people still in Excel. There is a route in between, which is having a specialized treasury management system. Specialized treasury management system is somewhere in between Excel. It gives you the certainty and the reliability of a proper enterprise system, while not having the problems that you have with an ERP implementation. ERP implementation, as many of you know, is a big thing, particularly in treasury, where you don't get the skills for, to implement treasury, in a country like India. You don't even get them in Singapore and the other advanced countries. So treasury implementation from the ERP side has proven to be a challenge, which is why, like Maulik said, I think very few people actually end up using an ERP, even though they have a treasury module in the ERP, very few actually end up using it to run the treasury. The TMS solution, on the other hand, I think has this small disadvantage that it has to integrate with your ERP. It has to integrate with the business side. So, which means it sits on top of the data that your business is then, generating, and then gives you a consolidated view. So the treasurer can then see, all the exposures that are happening. The Deloitte survey actually interestingly says that 83% of the people say of the treasurers in India, well, they surveyed about 65 treasurers, they say that about 83% of the treasurers, which is almost 6 in 7 treasurers, they say that ascertaining exposures is their greatest challenge. Operational risk is probably the next, because, managing Excel sheets and making sure they're correct, making sure you're not over-hedging, under-hedging, making sure accounting for P&L correctly, operational risk is the next. But ascertaining exposure itself seems to be a very major challenge for treasurers. And a proper treasury tech can really eliminate the problem if it's properly integrated. So with a mid-path, with the treasury management system, which is neither ERP nor Excel, which is what the world is going into. A lot of companies are using this. Now, these are also available on a cloud. We're going to launch something in the first quarter of 2017. With that being available in the cloud and being very affordable, it becomes very easy for you to get the exposures at one point, provided you're able to integrate with the business. Now, this is a little bit of work, but not so much. I think it scares some people, but it's really not that scary because the number of interface points with your business are not too many. You need from the purchase order to shipments and for invoices and payments from the purchase side and similarly from the sales side, while debt and your money market and FX and all that are already in the treasury itself. So that data will come from the treasury, the business data will come from the ERP. So the interface points with the ERP is actually not so much. So once you have this in place, I think a lot of things happen. We have seen this actually happen in quite a few of our customers. The visibility itself provides you with the certainty that none of the exposures go unhedged or it does not go unnoticed. There are times when exposures are generated, exposures happen, but the treasury comes to know a little late. And there is a risk that they take in between. And even when they know that the exposure exists, even when it's a certain exposure, because they do not have the tools to actually run a hedging policy, to backtest hedging policy, and to enforce, to have a compliance with the hedging policy, I think there are leakages in the way that hedges happen, and there is a P&L impact as a result of this. I think tech can really help you solve these problems. Apart from this, in the operational side, they can actually help you if you centralize your treasury. It can help you centralize treasury. A lot of groups here have decentralized treasury. But if you have a good enough system, you can centralize treasury. And a central treasury, along with your interfaces with the banking system through SWIFT and with your trading systems through FIX and so on, can actually create magic. We have seen in a few customers where with the central treasury you can have in-house banking, where the central treasury acts as a banker for the rest of the group. So any money market or FX requirements get routed to the in-house bank, which then gets extremely good rates from the market because they're a group company and then they're highly rated and therefore they can get very fine rates in the market, and they can pass it downwards. And similarly, they can net off requirements. It's only the residual requirements that actually go to the market. So you save on the bid offer spread that you otherwise end up paying to banks. And it can also enable, for instance, running a payment factory. You have a central treasury system. You have the payment infrastructure set up in that system that connects to multiple banks, let's say on a corporate SWIFT network. Today it's possible, or on any other network. Then you can run the payments for the whole group from a single point. What are today called the payment on behalf of, or collection on behalf of. You can make payments on behalf of somebody else, on behalf of a group company, and you can make payment to a group company supplier directly, instead of money going from here to the group company and then from there to the supplier and so on, multiple hops you avoid. You can also do netted settlements. Settlements can be netted. So if I have to pay something to somebody, somebody has to pay something back to me, I can net it off and make a single payment. It results in significant liquidity relief, and gives you, saves working capital. Also saves you transaction costs, multiple hops and so on. I think the kind of savings that you can get in that is quite dramatic. So the treasury, the technology side in treasury is usually underrepresented in the Indian markets, and most of the morning session was on handling the volatility that is there in the market, volatility that is about to come into the market, and I think an important treasury technology, an investment in that is can actually pay back in less than 6 months. We just did some back of the envelope calculations. I think it can actually pay back much faster. So there is a midway, just to let you know that there is a midway, and you could go for neither go for the Excel route, nor go for the ERP implementation, which can be time consuming, but then go for a dedicated TMS kind of a system, treasury management system, that can sit on top of your ERP and then deliver all this in quick time. So this is roughly what we wanted to convey. And we have our people around. So if any of you have any questions, want to see what we have, I think you can maybe take a look at it and outside.
Why don't you share capital experience that you have implementation?
The
customer that you have world over implementation.
Oh right, okay. Actually, the implementation is talking of is actually for Keppel Corporation in Singapore, where it's a group, it's a large group, as you know. It's in the top 5 listed companies in Singapore with about 230 odd subsidiaries in 30 countries. So they use the central treasury, and the central treasury, they use in-house banking. They do the payment factory. A lot of payments move from the central payment infrastructure that they've set up, and a lot of money moves through the system. And they operate the whole thing with just 4 people. You can automate it so much that it can actually run very, very efficiently in a hands-off kind of manner. It also does the accounting. It does the accounting, it does a settlement, it does a settlement netting, whole hog, and then it can do, for example, all of us are getting into hedge accounting, right? And Ind AS is coming in April. So it can also do hedge effectiveness, can pass the accounting entries for hedge accounting. So it takes a lot of your bandwidth that you otherwise spend on operational time. It takes that away, and allows the treasury to move up and then become more strategic in the business. I think that is the real contribution of the treasury system. So for those of you, I would really commend that take a look. I think we are also launching something in the first quarter. So some of our people may be talking to you on this, a cloud-hosted kind of solution. So you can maybe talk, if there's interest. I think we also have. So there are no questions. Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure and honor to be with Almus in this, and hope to be back again in the recurring events. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kadir. And so just to build on what you said, one of the biggest resistance, and this is from the experience of managing the corporate treasuries over the last few years, one of the biggest resistance to really shift to an automated solution is the ERP, which is already implemented in the corporate. And there is always a temptation to get away with or rather have the same ERP extended to cover the treasury, but that never happens, and that becomes really the non-starter. And the point actually, what Kadir has really covered, is there are ready off-the-shelf product available. And in the current market condition, where the focus is so much on the risk management, this is the key, having a technology really supporting and empowering the entire functions. So thank you so much, Kadir, and I know I really apologize for the goof up that happened. You never had a presentation. By the way, there was a presentation slides, and he actually delivered it without the presentation. So a special round of applause for Kadir. Thank you. Thank you so very much.
So this is how it helps you in the operational side, is automation and monitoring, accounting and settlement. So this is an example of netting, settlement netting, which if you're a large organization actually makes a lot of sense. So this shows a position where you have these settlement obligations. You have a 10 million obligation from subsidiary A to bank, a 2 million from subsidiary B to supplier of subsidiary B, and a 4 million from bank 1 to subsidiary A, and 5 million from bank 2 to subsidiary B, all in the same currency, same value date. If this is the case, instead of making individual payments, I think it's still a slightly older version. What you could do is you could net off and make only net settlements. So if the same subsidiary has to receive and pay, you can net it off in your settlement system and just make a net settlement. It actually saves you quite a bit of liquidity requirements, number of transfers comes down, the settlement risk comes down. It's actually quite dramatic. Just one more slide, I'll just quickly. Okay, just to give you a quick summary of ERP or a treasury management system. Just a few points, I think. I think there was another version, I think that is again missed, but it's okay. That had a few other slides, it's okay. So this is something that I just wanted, since I missed it during the previous session, I just thought I will just walk you through. Thanks, I think you're running out of time for the next session, so you can maybe start the next session. Thanks.